Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Then a couple of minutes early here, and I'm delighted to see the many names. Oh, delighted to see the many names here. I recognize and know, uh, and so we have Les, and Debbie from Portland. Hi, and Joe Hayes. I'm so happy to see your name and know you're here. Hi. And Cindy, hi, from La Honda. Nice to. And Mary from Redwood City. Very glad that we have this time together. And Brian, hi. Anne and Jane. Now we're getting lots of people here, so thank you all for coming. So, welcome. Let me record. So welcome to our Sunday morning meditation and talk. And for this meditation, I want to evoke a very important Buddhist concept, which is in Pali it's anukampa, A-N-U-K-A-M-P-A. I translate it into English as care. It often gets translated as compassion, which is certainly inspiring, but the notion of care is a broader in scope than compassion. If compassion is caring for the suffering of others, care is caring for all aspects of whatever we're paying attention to, caring for. Not only the suffering, but also the happiness and well-being, what's beneficial for them. So how different and similar these two concepts are is maybe a semantic issue. But I'm very fond of this notion of care. And I associate care with something that is quite free, voluntary, that arises out of an open, relaxed, peaceful heart, mind. And it's it's a sentiment, it's a motivation that that doesn't require a lot of planning or intention or cultivation development. It's mostly a matter of not being preoccupied with other things, with fear or anger or conceit or with fantasy and desires, but to really kind of to settle and be at settled on oneself in some very deep way. And then free of responsibilities, free of obligation, free of fear, free of kind of cravings and greeds, there can arise this beautiful motivation that's kind of an expression of freedom, that has an openness to it, a lightness to it, a delight and a warmth and a joy to it. Maybe it's all very small, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but this is a beautiful sentiment of just kind of caring for something voluntarily and willingly, happily. And so for us to care for ourselves, and meditation is a time to care for ourselves with that kind of lightness and goodness and freedom and openness. And it's a little bit of a paradox because we can actually feel pretty bad. We could be very harsh on ourselves and critical and need a lot of forgiveness. And so some part of us, our heart, can meet what's difficult in us with care. And so, or if we sit and meditate, it's not just a matter of greedily, not at all a matter of greedily wanting to get concentrated and have wonderful meditation experience, but rather in caring for ourselves is to allow and cultivate good qualities, good inner states, good ways of thinking and feeling and being with oneself. But from this place of non-assertion, non-expectation, non-obligation, but rather a willingness in a voluntary way to be present for ourselves, for our welfare and happiness. So to take this meditation practice by caring for the posture that you meditate in, and choosing a posture which expresses your best care for yourself. And sometimes that might be sitting upright in a cross-legged posture, which is can be for in certain bodies, certain times, very caring way of sitting. It could also be sitting in a chair, or it could be lying down, or it could be standing, or it could even be walking. There's so many different ways of doing meditation practice. Sometimes the 4 postures are called the 4 dignified postures: sitting, standing, lying down, and walking. So taking a posture and adjusting the posture out of care, not only the care of avoiding discomfort, but also the care for what maximizes or will encourage alertness, presence, a kind of strength of presence for what's happening for us now. And that inner strength, at least symbolically, sometimes actually, I refer to as the spine. To have the spinal column be kind of balanced and strong and upright. Or if you're lying down, to also adjust the spine and also the shoulder blades, sometimes rolling the shoulder blades down onto the bed so they kind of slide down slightly if possible. It creates a nice kind of greater feeling of alertness and openness. And then gently closing your eyes. And then before doing much of anything else, to search inside of yourself for something like care, compassion for yourself, care for yourself, some place where you might have goodwill for yourself, really want the best for you. It associated with generosity, a feeling of abundant generosity that includes the generosity of forgiveness, which includes the generosity of giving our attention to our experience, the generosity of attention, not the attention that wants to override or push things away, but the attention that opens up to know and to see and to make room for possibilities that are different than suffering. So then within this body, to in a caring way, as if it's the most important thing you can do, the most caring thing you can do for the moment. Take a few little bit deeper breaths than usual, fuller breaths. Not dramatic, but that as if you're really going to oxygenate, to allow the whole breathing to be fuller, more complete. Allow there to be more oxygen throughout your body. A little more deeper breaths so that there can be a longer, relaxing exhale. these beginning exhales that are longer, you might silently to yourself, or if you're alone, out loud, just make the sound ah. Sometimes that sound can just help things soften and relax, can help you to settle into the present moment. And then to let your breathing be normal. And then continue for a few moments with, as you exhale, roam around your body. And if there's any place in your body you can relax, release, soften on the exhale, do so. It's a caring thing to release unnecessary tension, holding. And it's a caring thing to attend to kindly to the tensions that don't want to release. Maybe as you exhale, to offer a sense of allowing the tension to be there if it doesn't want to release. And then to settle into your breathing. To really trust that all you need to do is to relax with the breathing, to center yourself on breathing, to entrust yourself with your breathing in a relaxed way, easy way. And whatever happens as you're meditating here this morning, and you bring your mindfulness to it, you allow yourself to be mindful and clearly recognize what occurs as it occurs. See if there can be a spirit of kindness and care, a caringness. Not that you have to do anything, but the generosity of care. This is how it is. Okay. That mindfulness and care, awareness and care, perhaps merge together with whatever you're mindful of during this sitting. if you're wandering off in thought, let there be a caring attention to that mind which is wandering off. Not to keep wandering off, but then as an alternative to feeling bad about it or aversive towards it. So there's an opening up to awareness, the non-obligatory, generous act of opening up to your experience. Oh, this is how it is. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, to turn your care outward, kind of like you've had a light shining inward, light of care and attention. And now at the end, you turn that around and shine it outwards into the world. And is it possible to find within you a caring, a generosity, a goodwill that is not something that is you're obligated to do or to force yourself to do, but rather seems to come out of a settled heart, an open heart, some place of tenderness within. The care, the generosity does not have to be big, but some sense of staying present, gazing upon the world, gazing upon others, gazing upon the whole earth with appreciation, with awe, with delight, with care and love. Compassion. In such a fundamental way that it's just a feeling, an intention, before any thoughts of action come into play, what you should do. Just a feeling of care and goodwill. And to shine that light, to open that up to all beings everywhere. And to whatever degree, however small, let your goodwill and your sense of care spread outwards to be inclusive of all beings in your neighborhood, around you. All beings in the county or province that you live in. All beings in the country that you inhabit. Out into the whole world. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free. And may it be that each of us care enough for this, that in our way, in small ways and big ways, whatever is our way, we support that possibility. We support the happiness, safety, peacefulness, and freedom of others that we encounter. May all beings be safe. So I'd like to make an announcement before the talk. At the end of the talk, in about half an hour, I'll open up a Zoom room and we can have a community meeting. And so everybody's welcome to come, and you can raise some questions, concerns you might have, and we can have some discussion. Also, at some point, we can maybe break into small breakout groups of maybe 5 people, and you can meet some other people who've been coming to Sunday or being online at IMC for some time now. And then we'll come back into a larger circle and do a little more time together. So that's the plan, and the link to the Zoom room is at the very top of this chat. If you scroll up to the top, I'll try to put it at the bottom as well, and when we finish here. And also, it's on the IMC website. If you go to the What's New section on the bottom right, and there's a notice for this. It's in the calendar as well, but I think there you have to cut and paste the link. You can't just click on it. And there's a password, and the password is METTA, METTA. And that's information is there in the What's New section of the website and the top of the chat. And if you go to the IMC What's New, you'll see that right next to it, there's another notice for a sitting and teaching today that an organization that I'm involved in that started here at IMC called Insight World Aid is going to have a 45-minute little sit and a little discussion that has to do with Buddhist kind of care for the world, humanitarian care. And the Insight World Aid is kind of a fledgling Buddhist humanitarian organization, and doing a variety of small things. And so they're going to have a little, every month, first Sunday of the month, a little taste of people doing the work and some discussion about this kind of activity. So I think that starts at 1 California time. So, the first Sunday of every year is this part of as it's kind of around the first week of October is called Earth Care Week, and it's a Buddhist kind of day, a period to care for the earth and focus on the earth. It's kind of like Earth Day in April, but this is a week for Buddhists, and so today's that day to give a talk on that topic. And what I'd like to start off by saying is that caring for the earth and caring for oneself many times are the same thing. They overlap. I mean, sometimes we can care for one or the other, but they overlap. And over time, over the last decades, that overlap has become stronger and stronger, bigger and bigger. And where the circumstance of the earth, the ecology of the earth, how the earth is the ecology is unfolding and being destroyed and being shifted, has a huge impact on human well-being. And without caring for the earth, some of the major disruptions in human life will occur. So the caring for the earth is caring for oneself, caring for us humans. And many ways caring for ourselves, learning how to care for ourselves deeply, especially with what opens up through Buddhist meditation, is also a way that we can care for the world. And this idea that we get changed through Buddhist practice, so that our values, our orientation, or what motivates us begins to change, is one of the key features of this, this path that we're on. And one of those features, kind of part of the culture of awakening, is that certainly is caring, anukampa, caring for the earth, caring for others, caring for ourselves. But the radical kind of shift that is possible, I think, with this how we get changed through practice, is that instead of caring for the world, caring for the earth, being motivated by obligation, being motivated by a strong kind of adherence to responsibilities or to rights, human rights. Human rights are extremely important, but justifying caring for the world because people have rights is certainly a worthy thing to do. But what comes out of awakening is a different orientation, different basis for doing the same actions, but coming from a different place. And it comes from generosity. It comes from goodwill, and comes from care. And that's a motivating force. And so there's not a should, there's not an obligation, there's not guilt, there's not anger and blame, and it's not being motivated by fear. All those kinds of things get settled in this practice to a remarkable degree. And but it gives us access to other sources of action, other sources of motivation. And that for Buddhists can supersede or take priority over arguments of that we should do things based on human rights or based on human responsibilities that we have. But this only works, only works if we act from, and really act maybe passionately from, our goodwill, our care, and our generosity. If we simply talk about it and say, this is, that's it, and don't do anything, then I think we have to fall back on things like responsibilities and human rights, and in order to really take those seriously, in order to really care for the suffering planet we live in. But we live now in this changing world, of course, that now here in California we're facing multiple challenges, and other places in the world are facing multiple challenges in addition to the coronavirus. Here in California we're facing lots of fires, and week after week of really smoky air it's some people are, it's a health hazard now, but for everyone who's living this, they say that the accumulation of this kind of ongoing smoke will affect not necessarily our well-being in the short term, but might shorten our lifetime because of the stress and the challenges it adds to the system. And then we have heat waves after heat waves. Sometimes we have all this heat, and we have drought that's happening, not enough rain. And then we have in other places in the United States, we have hurricanes and tropical storms that are coming in, and flooding. And so the environmental challenges are huge that we go in, that we're living under. And some of them clearly have to do not with the interface between how humans live and the growing population and growing in places where growing use of resources, natural resources, that interface with the human world and the non-human world has reached its limit to how much it can sustain, how much the world can sustain human growth, human consumption, without coming to the homeostasis begins shifting and changing in some big way. And here in California, it's most clear with all the fires, that some of the challenges with the fires is that we've pushed into fire zones with towns and homes and everything that then have to be defended from fires. Fires have been part of this environment for centuries, but the last century there's been a lot of fire suppression. And so, of course, then there's a lot more dry wood and shrubs and things ready to burn. A couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, I met a Native American elder who lives in the mountains not far from here. And he remembers that when he was a child, he would go with his father and grandfather. Every year they'd go deeper into the mountains. And one of the things they would do is they would do small fires, a regular thing. They do fires, I think he said 1 to 10 acre fires in the fall. And that was part of their care and tending for the places where they lived in the mountains. And then in the 1960s, the Forest Service came and told his father that he had to stop. And because now they weren't going to allow any fires. And so, but now, 50 years later or more, the Forest Service is coming to him, who only has a child's memory, to learn from him what did they know about making those kinds of prescribed burns, those kinds of fires. They did it at a time of year that was usually not considered safe. They seem to have done it safely, and so how do they know to do it? What could we learn today from the ancient lore that had been learned over many, many generations by the Native Americans? I read recently about a man who, same thing, where I think his father was also a Native American in the Sierras, and his father stopped doing similar burns up there when he got a ticket from a fine from the Forest Service for burning illegally, even though his people had been doing it for generations. And so how do we care? How do we tend? How do we cooperate with the natural world so we live in some kind of harmony with it, rather than, because we can't just keep pushing and pushing into the limits without something breaking and something coming back and changing. And so caring for the world becomes caring for ourselves. And how do we do that? Not from duty, not from guilt, not from obligation, all of which, if nothing else works, is necessary. But how do we do it from generosity and real genuine sense of care and goodwill, and energetically so? What do we do? How do we do this? So I have, thinking about this, I thought about a story from the Vinaya, from the books about the code of conduct for the monastics. They have a lot of stories there. And they have stories that attribute to the Buddha's lives, and some of them seem more fable-like, but who knows, maybe they're true. And here's one where the Buddha encounters the natural world, and natural world that could be seen as dangerous, and his response and how he responded to that. Just like we're facing this coronavirus, we're facing fires, we're facing smoke, all these things. How do we face that? How do we show up for it? So the story has to do with the Buddha's relative, either a cousin or a nephew, named Devadatta. And Devadatta was a monk ordained by the Buddha, but he wanted to take over the order of monks. He wanted to be the leader. So he was jealous or had a quest for power or something. And so at one point, he tried to, a few points, 3 times, he tried to kill the Buddha. And the third time, the first time he tried to get some assassins to kill the Buddha, but when they came to the Buddha, somehow the presence of the Buddha just changed their minds, and they, rather than killing him, sat down and learned from him. The second time, Devadatta rolled a rock down from a mountain cliff down on top of the Buddha, and it missed the Buddha, but the rock shattered, and a sliver of the rock punctured the Buddha's foot, and he bled, and he was injured a little bit. A third time, Devadatta went to the royal stables, and he went up to the people who were caring for the royal elephants. And elephants back then were kind of like Bradley tanks for the modern world. They were animals of war that were quite impressive, and they were trained to fight and trained to kill, apparently. So he went to these royal elephant stables, and he told the people who worked there that he was a relative of the king, and he'd come to ask them for help, and he would give them lots of rewards if he helped them. And that would be that they would take the elephant out one morning and place it at the head of some street that the Buddha was expected to walk down. And when the Buddha started to walk down the street, the elephant was to charge the Buddha and to kill him. So the Buddha got up in the morning and went out for alms into town. And when he came to this street, sure enough, the elephant was let loose and came charging down the street for the Buddha. Apparently it was a long ways away, because 3 times people who were nearby told the Buddha to leave, to run away. Each time the Buddha says no. He said, Buddhas don't run away from danger. Something like that. And so the Buddha just stood there, and stood there calmly and peacefully, and stood there facing the Buddha, facing the elephant. And as the elephant was coming towards him, the Buddha filled his heart with goodwill, with loving kindness for the elephant. And as the elephant came closer, it slowed down, and then it got close enough. It actually got down on its knees, bent down, and laid there on the ground in front of the Buddha, and 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 ended his charge and didn't kill the Buddha. And so that was the end of the story. The Buddha then was not harmed. So it's kind of a fable, but it's a fable which I think lends itself to interpretation. And the interpretation is that in the face of nature, the dangers of nature, which there certainly are, that one of the things to do is to look at it, to really stop and take a good, honest look, to study it, understand what's really going on. And whether it's understanding climate change or understanding something locally, what's happening with your local creeks. Are there any creeks, rivers, waterways near your home? And do you really know what's happening to them? I was very surprised after now living in Redwood City almost 20 years. The other day I went for a walk and I discovered a creek I'd never seen before. And it's right next to the high school, and it's sandwiched between, it's only maybe 10 feet area, fences on either side protecting it. And there are reeds and little bushes and little trees growing in this little waterway. And I was just fascinated that this exists in Redwood City. I thought most of the creeks were covered over by asphalt. And so now I go by there and I'm studying it. So do we face and study the dangers, study what's happening? Face it and see it, look at it. And this ability, it's a basic practice of mindfulness. We stop and we look. We stop and we learn. We pay attention to things. It's a little different when it's something about what's happening in the environment, the world, because it's more than just offering kind of a silent attention and noting practice to what's happening. It also involves studying it and learning more about it. And then the Buddha offered his goodwill and maybe his generosity and his care for the elephant. So to come from goodwill, this is one of the most important teachings of I don't know most important, but one of the very important teachings of the Buddha about how to live in the world is to live in the world with goodwill. He put this at such a high level of importance, and using, again, the way religious teachings use hyperbole, he said, even if bandits capture you and are, sorry how graphic this is, and are cutting off your arms, do not give in to ill will. Maintain a heart of goodwill. And now, he didn't say don't try to escape. In other situations, he says it's fine, it's appropriate to escape danger like that if someone's going to harm you. But I think this kind of thought experiment is when it's hopeless to be escaped. And even in this kind of extreme situation, maintain goodwill for the bandits. I don't know if we want to kind of take this literally exactly, but what it points to is the tremendous value this tradition puts on having a heart that doesn't succumb to hostility, doesn't get caught in the grip of fear, doesn't get caught up in greed and desires, and consumption, but a heart that is able to stay close to that place. I would like to say natural place, tender place, maybe tender place, where these beautiful qualities of heart can be here: compassion and kindness, friendliness, goodwill, and care, generosity. That this is our inner wealth. This is also part of the natural world, how we are in our hearts. And if we want to do self-care, we want to be careful that we don't lose, destroy, cover over the richest parts of our natural inner life. And ironically, or maybe not so ironically, the very forces of the mind that destroy the inner life or cover it over or make it inaccessible, greed, hatred, and delusion, are the very same forces that humans are living with that are hugely responsible for so much of the environmental damage that's going on for the world. And in this way, this caring for ourselves and caring for the world, at its heart, has a common denominator. And the common denominator is to clarify and purify ourselves of forces of greed, hate, and delusion. And in doing so, also overcoming unwholesome fear, unhelpful fear that humans are often drive human life and drive us to often to make terrible decisions, and politically, economically, and socially. And so to begin to care, to look, and to appreciate the tremendous overlap between the world, the earth, and the environment, and our human life. And to take an honest look at that, including an honest look at ourselves. Some 5 years ago when I had the statistics, there was this idea that 7% of the human population are responsible for 50% of the carbon dioxide emissions. Reverse that, and they say 50% of the human beings on the planet, 3.5 billion, are the poorest people are responsible for only 7% of the carbon dioxide emission. That's really lopsided. But we can't just simply increase everything for the poor, so their carbon dioxide consumption goes up, production goes up as much as it is for the developed world. But we also want to, there has to be some change in what the developed world does, a radical change. Radical change in consumption and lifestyle, all kinds of things. And then, so then I use the language there needs to be, which now becomes a language of obligation. But from this other, from the culture of awakening, it becomes recognizing this disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And then from generosity, from care, from goodwill, and from joy, to look for a new way of living, to look towards a life of simplicity, look for how to consume less, how to have less negative impact on the world and on the underprivileged people, the poor. How can those who have the means use the means to reduce the damage that their lives are contributing to the world? And no one feels like they're damaging themselves, and so we don't want to shame anyone, make it obligatory, but how about for ourselves? How do we come from the best qualities of heart so we're inspired and want to do it? We're happy to change. That's the task. And if we're going to really make a difference in this world, I think it's going to help a lot if rather than the burden of change, we discover, we work towards, try to experience the joy of change. We're moving towards a better lifestyle, towards a better way of living. We find how we enhance the wealth in our own heart, enhance the ecology of the heart, so that ecology shines and is rich and valuable, so that the work we do for the environment, for social justice, for environmental justice, for the welfare of the world around us, is really feeds us, nourishes us from beautiful places within. I think that would be the culture of awakening as we engage in earth care. So this is Earth Care Week. We're kind of in the middle of it, and so maybe for this week and for every week, but especially this week, maybe you could make this a little bit of a theme for over the next week, how you can care for the world more than you are already. And maybe not to make it, and to do that in a way that is not obligatory, not heavy, but really comes from a place of lightness and joy, but does make a difference. So, those are my thoughts for today for Earth Care Week, and thank you for listening. And then we have a couple of minutes before 10:30. I can say that might be nice to tell you that one of the one of the things I've done in this regard is, after many years of having this wish, finally being able to actualizing it, is that I co-created with Susie Harrington and Kirsten Rudstam a training program on for Buddhist eco-chaplains, people who offer spiritual care in relationship to the non-human world, to the environment and our relationship to the environment, the ecosystem. And we finished one whole program that ended in September. It was a fantastic group of people, and it was really inspiring to see their dedication and love and activities they were setting themselves up to do as eco-chaplains. So that was a wonderful thing, and so that's an example of something that's been part of my life and my joy to offer. And we're going to start that again in, I think in January, we start the next year of training. So thank you, and I'm going to stop now, and then here on YouTube in a few minutes, and I'm going to set up the Zoom room, and it'll be probably open before I get there, but I think Bev Spiker will say hello to people, and I hope it all works. I chose a big Zoom account, and I hope for this time we get in happily, all of us. So thank you for today.